and that those were great choices and those counted, as practice activities. But and then also letting them know that even evidence points us to natural types of learning. So anytime we can make for natural experiences, those are actually more salient than those kind of simulation activities or worksheet activities that don't really give kids that real practice. And then I'm sure many of you have also seen on Facebook, there's a lot of different charts out there. The Illinois State Department of Education put out some charts about how many hours per day kids should be actively involved in education. So sharing that type of information. I know some local school districts have done things like that too, that just because they're at school from 9 to 3:45 or 8 to 3 or whatever their school schedule is, it doesn't mean that they're being like actively involved in worksheets from 8 to 3:45. That really there's so many other opportunities that are happening throughout the school day that they can put into place there too. So a lot like what Illinois Department of Education put out was that for early childhood, so for kids under like for pre-K through first grade, really no more than 2 hours of direct school work per day. That's the maximum they would expect. That's closer to like 90 minutes a day for kids first grade and under. And then for those second through fourth grade, you're looking at a max of 3 hours. And again, those are maximum limits. So just trying to kind of chunk your time together on when it would be convenient for you. Another thing we did, one of our very first trainings that we did through the Oklahoma Autism Center was about routines and looking at routines, not just of the individual child, but of the family. So if you haven't been able to look at that, like us on Facebook, you can likely find the link there. But that really talks about how, there's multiple routines for all the people that are staying home throughout the day. So the routines of both parents, the routines of all of the children, and seeing where those different routines can line up. That training is really great. Tara did that. I don't ever like to give her, too much credit, but she did a great job with it. And I learned a lot from it and a lot about the different resources that are out there for routines in the family.
Yeah, and that training, I just put the link for all of our different trainings on there. But yeah, I think too, in this training, you can see how you can go through a routine matrix with a family that shows them all the activities in their day, and then you kind of show what are some of those activity goals they're wanting to work on, and how can you incorporate it at mealtime or when they're playing with their friends or they're playing a game. So that way you're showing them that you are working on these things. It might not look like it does at school, but you're still addressing these in a different way. So that link is right there. So we'll go on to the next question here. It is for Marisa. How do we encourage our students to stay on task when they have no interest in the activity?
I think with this, you really have to think about what is motivating to them and use it. We've got to make it worth whatever we're asking them to do. We have to make it worth their while. Whether that's using their interests, whether we're saving access to their preferred items and activities, for those special times when we're really needing them to focus and get that buy-in. So first you have to do this little thing for me, and then you get access to the things that you like. I have to do that with my kids at home all the time with their video games. It's really hard to, if they have access to the video games all day long, to pull them off. And so to say first thing in the morning, first you need to empty the dishwasher and then you can have access to the remote, or first you do your online learning dashboard and then you can have access to your switch. And so kind of saving those special, highly preferred activities for when you're really going to need them to do that first then contingency. I think making short snippets of things is helpful. So, maybe the work time is just 5-10 minutes. You know, we're going to do one thing of math, and then you're going to get to take a break, and then we're going to come back, you know, after a natural break, maybe after lunch. You know, we're going to do 5-10 minutes of reading, and then move on to something else. So I think just keeping in mind that we are not replacing a full day of education. Right now, we are just trying to kind of maintain. I've been on calls with directors of special education, and the main theme that they keep saying over and over and over again is you cannot go wrong if you are individualizing for the kid and just helping the family get through this time. That really, we have to be meeting those basic needs before we can ask for them to be educating anybody. And so it may be that we are just there to listen before we're trying to expect academic tasks to be done.
Yeah, and another piece of that was, and I don't know if this is what the question was referring to at all, but you know, if you're also having some difficulty keeping them engaged, like in the virtual session, we do have a webinar on that. But I think about like, you know, when you first started working with that student, maybe at the table, your goal was just to get them to sit at the table with doing things that they like. So if you're really trying to build on the virtual session, your session might start with just, I just want to interact with them in the session, doing an activity that they like. So we might just start by playing a game on the computer and then gradually add in a little bit of work. So it's kind of like you started when, you know, when you were getting them to work at the table by just getting them to sit. Well, now we're just getting them to sit and attend to the computer to do something they like, and then even if it's watching their favorite YouTube video, but then we can build on from there too. Okay, great, Marisa. Okay, Kelli, back to you. Yes. I'm pinning you guys.
Okay.
Okay, so how much feedback from parents, students should we as teachers expect from our students with autism during this distance? So one of my students, the teacher said one of her students is in the first grade and nonverbal. So I sent home all the activities that we do in a normal classroom setting and his AT device that would enable him to continue to learn. I keep checking on the parent through contacts at least once a week. Is there more support that I need to give the student or parent?
I do have some questions back to that, but I don't know if this person is still on or anything. But just wondering, like, is the parent responding to that? If the parent is responding to that and there's an active participation on both sides in that once a week, and not really getting a whole lot of more, you know, needs or, you know, contact between those sessions, it's probably adequate. Remember that all of these households are, you know, trying to function much like your own, where it's, you know, I'm trying to scream at my kids right now and tell them, leave me alone, because they of course need me when I'm engaged in something. And so we're all kind of, it may not feel like enough to you, but sometimes if we're offering more, it can get overwhelming. So really paying attention to that fine line that's between offering appropriate levels of support or adequate levels of support and overwhelming families. If we're asking for engagement multiple times a week, sometimes parents feel like they have to get onto those calls multiple times a week, and that they're failing if they don't. And we definitely want to stay away from that. We're going to actually be having a recorded training on this with communicating in difficult situations next week. You know, this is something that happens in the schools as well as outside during times like these. And there are some really great strategies that you can use to make sure that you're not overwhelming families, or you're not kind of committing those social missteps that can occur whenever we're trying to engage families. So I would say that reaching out to them, if you're currently reaching out to them face to face, like via something like this, like a virtual method, or on the phone, try to go through a text version too. Sometimes families feel a little bit overwhelmed with responding in a live situation, much like I do. When I'm in a live situation, I can't quite take on one more thing. But if you email me and say, hey, I was thinking about our last session and this is a question I had, could you answer these other questions for me, and make those questions about how did you feel about this activity? How are you feeling about our, engagements, whatever they may be. Just trying to get a little, temperature of the room on, are they feeling overwhelmed? We had a family in one of our sessions that we had kind of forgotten that they had multiple children at home with autism, and all of these different providers for each child. So they had the teacher for each child, a speech pathologist for each child, an occupational therapist for each child, some behavior analysts for each child. So you could take that number of children, 3 children times 4, and we had 12 sessions a week, plus parents that are just trying to survive this really, really tough time. So it really required a lot of collaboration between the providers outside of communicating with the family and just saying, hey, we're going to try to troubleshoot this and minimize the number of times we put in a lead person. Marisa was involved in this. And it was really nice to see the collaboration behind the scenes to say, you know what, we can help you and we can make 12 sessions into 3 for these 2 kids. And that took a lot of the burden off the family. So I'd say as long as you're getting some positive feedback, if the parents are shutting you out, that is a sign of resistance. And we will be talking about that a little bit more in next week's training. So I hope that that answers some of those questions right now. If not, put them in the chat box and we can try to circle back to that.
Yeah, I did for the families that I work with, I did like a quick little free like Survey Monkey kind of deal. And it was like 5 questions. I don't know, it might have been 3 questions. I'd have to look at it, but it was like, I was giving them activities each week as an OT. And so it was like, are the activities, how are they too hard or too easy? And then I had them rate it, and then I had, am I giving you enough? Like the number of activities? And they would say just enough, I could use more, or there's too many. So it was really objective answers. I didn't have to think much on it. And then what was your kid's favorite activity, and what activity that you wish you hadn't, or I didn't give you? So I got some good objective feedback. And like one of the moms was like, and I wouldn't have thought this if I hadn't have done that, but she said, and she would never have told me this either. She would in a survey, but not just tell me face to face, and she said, I wish you had more activities that she could do by herself. Because I feel like all the activities you're giving me, I have to be there right there with her. And so the next week, the activities were easier activities for that child. So that way I knew she could do them on her own. And then I made the activities that needed some adult assistance, either things that I did with her online or she did with mom. So that little survey was really helpful for me to get an understanding, like in their temperature. Okay, so we're going to go back to Marisa. Okay, this is something we got a lot of questions about behavior and kind of how to help parents with behaviors. We do have a tips for de-escalation webinar on the website that I shared with you guys. This particular person asked about how do you guide parents with strategies regarding meltdowns, refusals, and or running away?
Okay. So first, I think that you have to really talk to the parents and listen and hear kind of what they're saying as far as when it's happening, what are the conditions it's happening in, who's involved when it's happening, and see if you can kind of get at why is the behavior happening. Are they running away to get to something? Are they running away to avoid something? Are they screaming to get your attention? Are they screaming because they have no way to communicate their wants and needs? Are they communicating to get out of something? And so, because every behavior is some form of communication, you really need to think about and get at why, what is the function of it, and you'll get that from looking at the patterns of the behavior. Oh, they always scream when they're wanting to get into the refrigerator, or they always scream when I put them in front of the Zoom meeting. And so what is it? What is the function? Because when you know the function, then you can address it accordingly. Because if the function is to avoid, the child needs to learn an appropriate way to avoid. We all avoid. We all do that, but we do it appropriately. Screaming is not an appropriate way to avoid. And then, so if we teach them to ask for a break, you know, by either using a break card or using their communication device, or even just teaching them, hey, when you need a break, just say, I need a break. And then at first you're going to respect that. But another skill that they may need to learn is waiting. And so thinking about, you know, is there a skill deficit? Or is it a motivation problem? Because you're going to treat it differently if it's a skill deficit versus if it's a motivation issue. And so really thinking about kind of two things. What can I do to prevent the behavior from happening in the first place? But then also what you do after the behavior will decide whether that behavior continues or stops or decreases. And so really helping the parent identify, there are some good, they're free online. There'd be the motivation assessment scale. It's a free rating questionnaire that you could go through with the parent. It's a very informal functional behavior assessment, very, very informal. I mean, there's no data, it's just asking questions that kind of lead you to a potential function of the behavior. And so then it's really going to be trial and error. If the motivation assessment scale identifies that the function of the behavior is escape, then you want to teach them an appropriate way to escape, but then also ask yourself, why are they trying to escape? Are they trying to escape because the work's too hard? Are they trying to escape because the work is too easy? Are they trying to escape because they're not motivated to do it? And so if they're not motivated, you're going to add motivation to it, kind of like what I talked about earlier, using their interests, using those preferred items and activities as a contingency. First you do this for me, and then you can have access to the thing that you like. If it's a skill deficit, then we need to teach the skill. If they're bored, then let's up the game. And so really cannot highlight enough identifying what that function is and then addressing it accordingly. So kind of just going back to the examples that were given, a child is running away. If the function of the running away is to go see something, like if they love construction and they are running to a construction site, how can we feed that need to see construction? Could they watch videos on construction? Could they, you know, there's, my kids used to watch it all the time, but it was basically like little 20-minute early childhood construction shows of different trucks doing different things. If they're running away to escape, go back to that same question, why are they trying to escape? Is it too hard, too easy? Are they not motivated to do it? And so, you know, if the function of it is attention, then let's give them attention for doing the right things, making good decisions, having this appropriate behavior, making sure that we're giving them attention more often, especially during this time when, you know, the stress levels are high. Tara, I don't remember, did you say you put up the anxiety webinar? Because we do have one on how to decrease anxiety and stress in kids with ASD.
It's on that website.
Okay, so it's on the Yondo. That's another one that we've done to kind of address those things. But you really, you know, listen to the parents, come up with you know, a manageable plan, something that's, you know, not, because like we've mentioned, you know, everybody's trying to do the best they can with what they have. And so come up with an idea together, start small, and build on that success.
Very good. I was, Marissa and I did a consult, our first virtual consult this week, and it was with the mom and the teacher. It was a great team, and the child was having a lot of behaviors at home, you know, and similar behaviors to what he was having at school. But it was anytime mom told him no, he couldn't have something, and which is very common. And so what we found out was, after we kind of dug and we listened to the mom, it's like he didn't know, in his mind, no meant never. And I think that happens a lot with kids with autism. They can be very black and white. Like, if you tell me, no, I can't have my iPad, what you're really saying to him is, no, you can't have it right now, right? But in their mind, they're thinking, no means I'm never, ever going to get this thing again. So I'm going to fight you as much as I can to try to keep it. So a big thing that we talked about with mom was, let's make it, instead of we're not saying no, we're putting some parameters on that. And we're going to use visuals to show them you can have it tomorrow, or you can have it twice in one day. So some examples we came up with her was cookies. It was a big fight for cookies. So if he saw that there was a package with cookies in them, he wanted them until they were all gone. Right. And so if she tried to just stop after 2, it was, you know, so what we're going to try with him is we're going to put a picture of 2 cookies on the fridge every day. And whenever he eats a cookie, we take a picture off, and there's 1 more left. And when they're all gone off the fridge, cookies are done. Okay. So in the beginning, it's going to probably get worse before it gets better, but we want to teach him that this is what's telling you when you can have it. The other example was, he would want his dad to push him on the swing that they have inside, and he kept wanting to go forever, you know, and it was hard to stop the situations, you know. So we took a dry erase board, and we're going to put the number of bubbles on there that he's going to push him. So maybe it's 10 times. We're going to put 10 bubbles on there, and every time he swings them, they cross off a bubble. And when we cross off all bubbles, we're done with swinging. So it's clear that when this activity's over, and it's visual, so it's not because mom says no, it's because the visual shows me that it's over. So those might be some nice strategies. The other one that we did with him, and then I'll move on to the next question, was is kind of doing almost like a task list for him. So instead of saying, no, you can't have this, you can have this when you do A, B, and C. Read a book for 5 minutes. He likes timers, play with a puzzle for 5 minutes, and then you can have your iPad for 5 minutes. So when he could see that, then it made it a lot more clear. We weren't telling him no, we were showing him when he is going to get access to it. So that's something that you might think about for those kids that are probably, a lot of them are having trouble with being denied access to something.
Tara, you want to mention the question?
Yeah, what can we do when we know the behavior is due to motivation, but he always has access to the motivator at home? When mom takes it away, he has a tantrum. Yeah, I mean, those are definitely different struggles that we're going to have now with kids being at home all the time, right? Is that they are going to have more access to their motivators. I think too, like, I think about like coaching mom that maybe in the beginning you don't take it away until tomorrow. That might be too much for that kid. So let's just practice in small steps taking away the iPad. You know, for some of you guys that we've done consults with, you know, we've practiced a lot of this. Like, we're just going to practice putting the iPad in an all done box, and maybe they have to do one thing and then they get it back. So we're really thinking about teaching them how to give up a preferred item, but it's not like if you asked me to give up my Diet Dr. Pepper and I wasn't going to get it for another month, I would probably have a fit, right? But if you could say, okay, Tara, we're going to work on this, and you can't have another one for 30 minutes. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Okay, so thinking about that with some of your students, like, how can we make it really small and successful where we're gradually teaching them how to give up items, small steps at a time? Marissa, did you have anything more on that? I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, I was thinking about just how that it's that communicating and understanding I'm gonna get it back. If you take it away, I'm gonna get it back. And so it's starting really small, you know, practicing that. And she mentioned that all done box. It's a trick, but sometimes people are more willing to give something up to an object than a person. It's a stationary thing. If you put the iPad in this basket, the basket's not going to run away with it. And so that's a little easier to give it over to. And then once they put it in, they get it right back. And so you're teaching them, yes, you're going to put it in, but you're also going to get it right back. And then over time, they start to give it up easier. And then you just, like Tara mentioned, you just ask them to do that one simple thing before they get it back. And then you can build in increased time and the difficulty of the task. But I think that, like for my kids, I mentioned the video games. You know, I was in such a fog for probably the first week or two that I didn't even realize that they were on it from sun up to sundown. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to do something about this. And so, you know, my boys are typically developing. So, you know, they're understanding everything that's going on. And I had to tell them, we're all having a hard time with these parameters. And so I'm going to set up some parental controls on the Xbox so that, you know, the Xbox is only available during these hours. So that next day, they started off with where it just shut off. It wasn't me coming in the room and saying, oh, time's up. It just shut off. Mm-hmm. And that made it a lot easier for them to, I guess, get off of it because the system shut down. And then, you know, of course, they have iPads and switches, which don't go with that parental control system. And so I have to collect those. And, you know, it basically the end of the day, and I put them away we have a safe so that they know they can't get in it.
Funny.
But I put them in the safe, and then they know. Them. I lock them up, and so I have to say, okay, when your schoolwork is done, you get access to the switch. So they only have Xbox during these hours and these hours, but they have access to the switch and the iPad after their work is done. Like they're on it right now because I knew that I was going to need to not have interruptions for an hour during this time. So I was like, all right, these highly preferred items I'm saving for when I need you to be doing something else and not bugging me.
You locked your kids up or the devices? Which one?
Devices.
Oh, see, I was thinking I need a safe to put my children in. No.
Oh yeah,
don't do that. We don't
not big
recommend
enough.
that.
No,
that's not a recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Marisa. That was great. Let's see. Okay, Kelly, do you have any suggestions for parents of 3-year-olds to simulate verbalizations?
Okay. That's, again, it's kind of tough when you don't have the specific situation. So this would be more of a general situation than something specific. But I always like to fall back to those really evidence-based Hanen techniques for those speech paths out there. Those are just really great language stimulation things. So what that would be is just modeling. So also telling parents, I know that you can probably anticipate a lot of needs. You're probably the best at translating what your child is trying to communicate to you. In those moments, just modeling the correct single words. So if they're wanting those cookies that Tara's talking about, making sure that you're bombarding with the word that you're trying to get out of the child, and then elaborate on it. Oh, those are tasty cookies. Those are crunchy cookies. Those are chocolate chip cookies. Now I want cookies. That's not good. But I, you know, like all of us, it's just snacking all the time. But I would say that anytime you can do things like that, something that we do a lot at our early foundations sites is making a list of words that are so if parents are feeling like just overwhelmed by the sheer number of words they would have to do, then just having you and the parent work together on these are the most commonly occurring words. These are the most functional words for my child. These are the ones that every time they come up, I'm going to say. It could be 10 words, could be 20 words. I usually don't like to go above the 20. And I like to look at a lot of different areas of words. So I'd want, maybe 25-30% of those to be food items, and 25-30% of those to be people, and 25-30% of those to be toys and activities, and then the other 25 or 10 by the time you get to the math, I think, would be needs. So things like the bathroom or help or things like that. So just trying to make a list that's just doesn't feel like every single word they're saying to their kid they're having to bombard them with. But these are the ones I'm going to really focus on and work on. And then it seems a little bit more attainable, achievable to the family. So that would be where I would start for that just speech only piece of it. I think also just going back to some of the things we've said in some of these other questions is coaching prior to the session. So just what can you do either through email or text before the session to see how you could get the parents' needs as the focus. So because if you're all ready and prepared, and I have a lot of speech therapists telling me this within our private practice and some of the coordinators that I work with Early Foundations, that they come and they're really prepared for their session, and then they start in and the mom or dad, I know we work with moms a lot more than dads, says this is our problem today, and kind of throws them off. So anything you can do to prepare beforehand with those surveys or forms or emails or texts the night before, the couple hours before, what's going on today, what would you like to make a priority, those can be really helpful. And then telling them hey, the first, especially for the young ones, the first few minutes of the session, don't worry about bringing the kiddo into it. Let's just have maybe 3 to 5 minutes to talk about what we're going to do in the session. Sometimes we assume too much, that the parent knows too much about the jargon that we use, about the skill that we're practicing. So getting them ready for it so that they can feel more comfortable and confident about what's to come. So you can say, hey, based on your questionnaire, I see that, I'll use Tara's example, we're getting a lot of behaviors around the request of cookies. So is that something that's still happening? So this is the way I like to teach it, and explaining your way of teaching it and the strategy behind why you're doing what you're doing. That by allowing only a few options for cookies, you're doing this, or by placing the cookies into a container, you're allowing the power struggle to be between, an inanimate object, not you. So that could be really good. And then also it gives me time to talk to parents about how when I'm coaching you through teletherapy or something like this, I can come across as being bossy to you. And that has absolutely no reflection on you. It's just the nature of teaching children, young children, especially children with autism, especially, is the timing. The timing is key. So if I all of a sudden during this, the child does something really great, and I'm like, give him that snack, give him that drink, right? Really quick. He did so great on that. Then it's because that timing is so important. Or prompting a child to get it right. A lot of my parents don't even know the word prompting and what that means in the scheme of things when it comes to teaching or when it comes to therapy. That okay, what I mean by prompting to get it right is we're not going to give a whole lot of time or opportunity to get it wrong. So whenever I say prompt him, this is what I mean. Because we're not only teaching kids during teletherapy, we're teaching the families. This is something that is fairly natural for me because I've been a family and home-based therapist for 10 years. But I hear a lot of anxieties among teachers and therapists in the schools because that's not part of the educational model to have a family member right there with you all day. So part of this teletherapy is allowing you to build rapport. So if that's something that's a real struggle for you, I really encourage you to be a part of that recorded session we're going to have out early to mid next week about communicating during those difficult situations, because family-centered care, family-centered techniques, strategies, those aren't only for telehealth. Those are some of the most evidence-based methods that we could use in any of what we're doing in education, healthcare, therapy, you name it. It's been around for decades, and the inclusion of families is it's just an integral part of progress. So I hope that answers it. I got a little soapboxy with my family-centered stuff, but I tend to do that. Let me know if you have any questions on that.
That was perfect. We're gonna do one more question from Marisa, and then we'll open it up. If there's any questions, please put it in the chat. So Marisa, the last question for you is, what are some creative ways to reach out to parents of very young students? I know I have a couple young students, and it's hard. And I know you work with a bunch of young students at Early Foundation. So if you could give us some tips on that, that would be great. Oh, sorry, Marisa. I accidentally muted you instead of me.
Unmuting. Now, can you hear me? Okay. So what we're doing with our families at Early Foundations, and we've got kids that are 18 months all the way through 4, okay, getting ready to go to pre-K. And so we really started off with, here's what we're offering you. What will work for you this week? And so what we offered was, and they're used to home visits because we do home visits with them, but we were upping that since we couldn't do the one-on-one intervention with the children or the play groups. So it was, okay, here, we're gonna offer you 3 days a week. What can you handle this week? And we kept saying, we are flexible, this is fluid. If right now you can't do 3 weeks, that is totally fine. And so we really did individualize for each family. We've got two sets of twins. And so, and each of those even look different. We are really more, for one set of twins, we are working with the mom on how to handle 2 crazy 3-year-olds right now, who are out of their routine and stuck in an apartment and with nowhere to go, nothing to do, and they're just crawling all over each other and feeding off of one another. And so how, what she really wanted to work on was sharing. And so it was really working with her on how to do a back and forth thing with the boys, because they're trying to compete for her attention. And so, with that family, it was really, well, with all of them, it's really been about, what is it that you need? What do you need to work on right now? For some, it was, hey, this is a great time to work on potty training. This is a great time to work on washing hands. And so it was really finding what naturally in their family environment, home environment, family routines, how could we help the parent interact with their child during that? How to play with their children, how to just keep them engaged. So it really was more about teaching them how to engage, play, how to use kind of just normal everyday interactions to teach a skill. There's a great website, Vanderbilt Kennedy Center has it's a training series called Triad, and they have a great video. It's the ABCs of behavior and learning, but it has some great videos, and I really encourage all parents to watch it. But it's like showing, one of those little wind-up toys, and the child is really engaged with this wind-up toy, but then it stops. And so it's just teaching the kid to ask mom for help. And what an invaluable skill that is at home and at school, across ages. So from the time when they're 2 and they need to ask for help, all the way to when they're in high school, if they haven't learned to ask for help yet, they need to know how to ask for help. And so using opportunities like that, there was one of the videos is they're playing with a puppet and the mom is just tickling the kid, and then she stops. And the kid obviously wants more, And so he's saying, wake the dinosaur or something, wake up. And that's how he's asking for more. But it was that just engaging with the kids, having fun. You know, there's so many apps out there for kind of teaching those basic skills, that there's a bunch of lunchbox ones. You know, there's so many free things out there right now that, you know, even if it's a 30-day trial, it's covering our window for the rest of the school year. But you know, making sure they have access to that. We did a training. Casey Armour did it on technology and apps and resources, and so you can find, provides a list of different resources and things for to be able to use at home. But I would just really reach out to the family and just, what do you want help with? This is a great opportunity to be working on those everyday routines, toileting, washing hands, doing chores around the house, and using your expertise as a teacher to help them teach their child how to do that.
Very good. So just to kind of to put a couple plugs in there on some of the webinars that we've created these around like questions that we're getting, and they're all free. We have one that is on there now called Reducing Stress and Anxiety. Marisa and Bonnie McBride did it. And all these are 30 minutes or less. And when you click on it, there's handouts in there and everything. One of them is on, and so they go through just some strategies for reducing stress, anxiety, and understanding that in children with autism. Technology resources is one that Casey did. Casey Armour is a speech path. And she goes through like her top recommended resources because it's so overwhelming, all the information we're getting. I did one on creating structure and routine, so how to help families with that process. Also, I did on 7 tips for engaging students with autism in virtual sessions. So it gives you just some strategies on how to do a virtual session for a child who can attend to those. And tips for de-escalating. So strategies on how to, when students' behavior starts to escalate, what are some things we can do to help de-escalate? And then there's one on here on autism and safety. So some things to think about for children with autism who wander, like how can we make sure that they're safe? Kelly posted the website in there to access all the trainings. Also, you can follow us on Facebook. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that we do have a limited amount of consultations left. So if you have a situation where you just need another set of eyes to talk with the family or to join your Zoom session, you can contact us, and we can set up a virtual consult. Marisa, do you want to type your email address in there in the chat box? So email Marisa if this is something that you would be interested in, and to just let us join in on one of your Zoom calls with the family. It was really helpful when we did it yesterday. Like, it was nice having everybody there in one place. We had the PT, we had the speech or the para, we had the special ed teacher, the parent, and we all just kind of problem solved on the next step. Okay, so it doesn't look like there's any other questions here. Marisa's got her email address on there. If you do have more questions, there's Marisa's email. You can email her and we can either create a short little video on it or add it to our next question and answer. Next week, Kelly's going to talk about having difficult conversations. And then we'll also have a video coming out about how to coaching families. Okay, well, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. And we hope that you continue to stay safe at home, and hope we can all come back to your schools next year.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.